Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. To end the bad old year of 2021, on a lighter note, we're going to start the program with a light show. Photos and a little bit of video from the Lightscape at the Brooklyn Botanical Garden. Some interesting news about Sudan solidarity. Randy Weingarten, the national president of the American Federation of Teachers, wrote a letter to Secretary of State Blinken. In part, she said, "We look to your leadership to demand the Sudanese military end the violence against its citizens, including teachers, students, human rights defenders, and journalists, who are looking to exercise their freedom of association and assembly. Soldiers and police who attack peaceful protesters should be held accountable." Teachers, whether in the AFT or in the NEA, should use that statement as a wedge to try to get the treatment of our Sudanese brothers and sisters brought up as a matter for action from locals and state federations that they're affiliated with. We have a model resolution that we link to on The Struggle. Now from a demonstration in Sudan that took place on December 25th. And this tweet from David Beasley, the executive director of the World Food Program, about the attack and looting of this World Food Program storehouse in Darfur, Sudan. The WFP decided to suspend operations. And this Sudanese attorney tweets bitterly, "This is the security for which the junta justifies its control of power in Sudan." We lost a giant this week. Of course, I'm talking about Archbishop Desmond Tutu. His work against apartheid in South Africa alone would have qualified him for that accolade, but he supported many other good causes, including that of the Palestinians. In 2007, he was slated to speak at a meeting of the Palestinian Christian group Sabeel in Boston. He found out that there was an anti-war rally going on at the same time, so he took time off to attend it. Here he spoke about Jewish Voice for Peace.
Let's shout right across to the Holy Land and say, peace! Peace! For all! Jew and Palestinian. Very good, very good. You're a very good choir. Thank you. I just wanted to say a very big thank you to Jewish Voice for Peace. You are wonderful, wonderful people, for you are sometimes vilified as self-hating Jews. Thank you for standing up for the truth. We thank you, and next time let us meet in the Holy Land when there will be peace for all.
In 2010, Archbishop Tutu started calling Israel an apartheid state and announced his support for BDS. Many people speak that way now, but this was 11 years ago. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, presente. News about the extra billion Israel wants from you taxpayers. As you probably know, Rosa DeLauro raised the bill in her Appropriations Committee, and it passed the full House overwhelmingly. In the Senate, one man, Republican Rand Paul, has blocked the emergency funding. It will come up in a regular bill in February. To raise a couple points, Israel wants to use this money, it says, to refill its Iron Dome launchers. Not mentioned is that Israel gets 500 anti-missile defense. Obama made sure of that and passed a bill that gave them $5 billion for this over 10 years. So as Senator Bernie Sanders has pointed out, the anti-missile program is fully funded. Besides, if there's such an emergency, why doesn't Israel use its own tax money to buy the weapons it wants? We're not talking about a poor country here. Every week we're bombarded about Israel's amazing technical ability, the weapons it sells, the cyber warfare it wages. By the measurements of this site, Israel is just below Italy and above Japan. So if they want to spend more money on guns, why should we pay for it? Not that we think anyone should sell Israel weapons. The government is guilty of the international crime of apartheid. And gangster regimes shouldn't be sold weapons at all. With January 6th approaching, the anniversary of the attempted insurrection, and warnings that January 6th was just the dress rehearsal, we point out the archive on fascism that you ought to attend to on the site of Promoting Enduring Peace. Go to pepeace.org, click on the Resources tab, and find the archive on fascism. The group Stop Solitary Connecticut and several Connecticut legislators pushed through a bill this year that would have ended solitary confinement. The bill would have created an ombudsman to have oversight of the State Department of Corrections, ended solitary, ended shackling of inmates in their cells, and the law required that inmates routinely spend no more than 16 and a half hours a day in their cells. The bill passed both houses, but Governor Lamont refused to sign it. Instead, he put out an executive order on the subject. We've talked in the past about the limitations of that approach, and the reason Stop Solitary Connecticut still continues to pursue a law. The group held a forum in early December, and we'll have a bit of it on the program right now. In the first section that we'll play, activist Barbara Fair talks about the enormous amounts of time prisoners routinely spend in their cell. Another speaker on the subject will be Ray Boyd, who has been released from incarceration quite recently after 29 years.
There are many facilities where, outside of the northern facility, where brothers suffer under 22 hours of extreme isolation on a daily basis. As I just stated earlier, I did 29 and a half years, 10,810 days of incarceration in the Connecticut Department of Correction. And majority of that, I would say 99.99% of that, was done in extreme isolation. 22 hours of lockdown in the Cheshire facility, 23 hours of lockdown in the McDougal facility. So there is, outside of recreation, an hour outside, or the 20 minutes for chow, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, there is no real exercise that can take place. That's why you see some of the inmates in Connecticut prisons suffer from high medical issues, because they're in their cells and all they're left to do is lay on their bunks and eat some of these preservative foods to try to sustain their life while they're behind these closed doors. So it's a real hard issue if you're not mentally sound. You see the mental health rate rising in the Connecticut state prisons because some of these brothers can't cope with being confined like that. This is a traumatic experience coming from someone that lived it, as opposed to most people that don't live it. You hear things like they were living in caves, now they're living in beachfront real estate. That's so far from the truth. That place on that rock or any of these facilities are no different from living in a cave. It's so dark and desolate in these places.
At this point, Barbara Fair talks about the Mandela rules. These were principles created in 2015, named after longtime prisoner and eventual president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. They are an attempt to establish an absolute minimum standard in the treatment of prisoners.
So one of the things I want to talk about in the executive order that the governor mentioned, he mentioned Mandela rules. Now, obviously, he doesn't know very much about the Mandela rules because Mandela rules is really about the minimum, the very minimum standards of care for human beings. Why is that our goal? That shouldn't be our goal. They said the minimum standards of care should be 22 hours. No. So we have people in here 21, 22, 23, and on weekends 24. We're not following Mandela rules.
That's right.
So that's the first thing he needs to know. We're not even following the rules that he's put in his executive order. And without oversight, none of this matters. So I want to go back to the people who've been in prison to talk a little bit. And I know you have to go, Garrett, so I'm going to try to get it real quick. And you guys kind of think about that when he has to go.
We got you.
Yeah, but I want you to talk about, it's just so much. What is it like just being in a cell that many hours a day?
So being in a cell, a lot of times when we think about prison, right, we think about the TV shows that we see, and we think about many different depictions that we see. Psychological warfare is a battle that's fought without no weapon. So it's hard to actually see and visualize the scars and the wounds that are being left on the minds of the individuals that suffer on a daily basis within these confines. So I think it's important to know that with the oversight you need these doctors in there. Like a lot of these brothers, before I came home, there was a young man that committed suicide in a unit in Cheshire. This brother only had 2.5 years or 2 years for possession of stolen guns. Like that oversight, there needs to be something there with mental health. There needs to be something there with medical, where these people are being evaluated the moment they hit the door, not after they're being, taunted by staff or their charges are being, being made known by facility members to other people because the counselor may not like him or medical staff may not like how this person was addressed. So there's many different, like the psychological battle is one of the biggest battles that's being fought in prison. Because like we don't see prison riots anymore, like we used to, because the psychological effect of prison is so tremendous on the minds of these young men that are coming to prison nowadays. And I think that needs to be a focal point when we're dealing with the intake of individuals coming into prison and how we deal with them. Like their reentry needs to start the day that they get to jail, not 6 months before they get released or whatever program they need to take just before they go on before the board.
We'll return to this issue in future programs. In the meantime, we urge you to visit the website stopsolitaryct.org. The British newspaper The Guardian reports on something that will be no surprise to viewers of the struggle. It states that at least 3 members of the Saudi hit squad convicted of the gruesome murder of Jamal Khashoggi are living in 7-star accommodation inside a government-run security compound in Riyadh. One of them is Salah al-Tubaigi, the man convicted of wielding the bone saw. We've talked about the scam of the so-called punishments of Khashoggi's killers in earlier programs. For details, go to saudius.org. And we want to congratulate the government and people of Washington, D.C. On January 1st, it became illegal to sell or use gas-powered leaf blowers in the city. The machines are ultra noisy and dangerously polluting. Next, we talk about crypto, the latest capitalist craze, cryptocurrency. Money backed by no country and no bank, coins mined not from the ground, but from computer puzzles.
Yvonne Taylor will kick us off today, giving us an up-close and personal look at the dire situation unfolding along beautiful Seneca Lake, on which she lives, and in other communities around the region. Seneca is the deepest of New York's famed Finger Lakes, a real jewel of a waterway, and the drinking water source for tens of thousands of people. Yvonne is vice president of the all-volunteer Seneca Lake Guardian nonprofit organization, which is a Waterkeeper Alliance affiliate, and she's been carrying on the fight against corporate intrusions for years. Crypto is just the latest.
Since I got elected to go first, I'm going to do my best to try and explain what the heck Bitcoin is. Some people may not be aware of it. So I'll just give like a little crypto Bitcoin 101. So Bitcoin is a form of decentralized virtual currency, meaning that it is not overseen by any traditional governing body. This form of cryptocurrency that we're most concerned about is called proof of work cryptocurrency, and it can be used to purchase goods and services or as an investment. When we think of mining, we also often think of, pitchforks and things going into the ground, but that's not the case with proof of work Bitcoin mining. Mining in this case is performed by thousands of high-powered computers that solve complex computational math problems. These problems are so complex that they cannot be solved by hand and are complicated enough to tax even incredibly powerful computers. The mining in this case is the process of creating new Bitcoin by solving these computational puzzles. Miners have become very sophisticated over the past several years, and using complex machinery to speed up mining operations is the key. Because these mathematical problems can only be solved by trial and error, and because the odds of being right in a single try are 1 in trillions, in order to be profitable, thousands of computers must run constantly in order to have the best chance of finding the key, verifying the latest transaction block, and being rewarded with the newest batch of Bitcoin. This entire process of recording transactions, solving mathematical problems, is referred to as mining. And because this mining is done using such powerful computers capable of generating thousands, millions, or even billions of hashes per second, it requires large amounts of electricity. Greenwich is permitted by the DEC currently to withdraw 139 million gallons of our lake water every day, and then return it back to the lake at temperatures up to 108 degrees Fahrenheit. If you'll recall, I mentioned that warm water contributes to incidences of harmful algal blooms. And in fact, on October 6th of this year, the northwestern quadrant of Seneca Lake, where this facility is located, experienced record harmful algal blooms right in that area. When the facility installed 7,900 Bitcoin machines, the air emissions at that plant increased 10-fold.
We conclude with video from Democracy Now!
In Afghanistan, dozens of women took to the streets of Kabul Tuesday, condemning the Taliban's recent attacks on women's rights, including a ban on long-distance travel for Afghan women unless they have a male escort.
The Taliban say, do not enter any car without a man. Where can we get a man? What about widows who don't have a man? Where can they find a man? This is not the proper way. We are not women of 20 years ago. We are educated women, and we will not keep silent under the Islamic Emirate.
Tuesday's peaceful action was violently repressed by Taliban soldiers who fired their rifles into the air to break up the protest. A number of the Afghan women were reportedly injured after the Taliban gunfire set off a stampede. The United Nations envoy to Yemen said a South African court has ordered Royal Dutch Shell to halt its plans to explore for oil in the pristine wild coast of eastern South Africa. Under the order, Shell must immediately halt underwater seismic tests, which can devastate whales, dolphins, seals, and other marine animals. The court's ruling follows a massive campaign against offshore drilling led by South African environmental defenders. Russia's Supreme Court has ordered International Memorial, one of the country's oldest and most respected human rights groups, to close down. Memorial focused on recovering and preserving the memory of millions of people who were executed, imprisoned, or persecuted during the Soviet era. But Russian officials accuse the group of being a public threat, receiving funding from Western powers. Rights advocates have denounced the court's ruling. This is an attorney with Memorial.
We disagree with the decision. We think it's illegal and unjustified. The claim was insolvent, but these kinds of cases have a powerful political motivation.
In Hong Kong, the independent media outlet Stan News has shut down after hundreds of national security police raided its newsroom on Wednesday, arresting at least 7 people, including senior staff. Stan News, launched in 2014, was one of the most prominent publications in Hong Kong opposing Chinese one-party rule. In California, the family of Valentina Oriana Peralta is demanding justice after the 14-year-old teen was fatally shot last week by a Los Angeles police officer while she tried on dresses inside a department store's dressing room. Valentina died in her mother's arms. This is Soledad Peralta speaking at an emotional family press conference on Tuesday.
There was nothing I could do. To see a son or daughter die in your own arms is one of the greatest and most profound pains that any human being can imagine.
Valentina and her mother came to the U.S. from Chile about 6 months ago. Her father, the girl's father, Juan Pablo Orellana, recently reunited with his family in Los Angeles. At Tuesday's press conference, he said, quote, "It's like my whole heart has been ripped out of my body."
Again, I ask, why do U.S. police routinely carry guns? The report of the incident in North Hollywood in the Burlington Coat Factory said a man was swinging a bike lock against several women and had bloodied at least one. Are you telling me that several police couldn't have subdued the perpetrator without shooting up the store with a rifle? U.S. police could follow the British model. There, only special squads have firearms. And the average British policeman does quite well without a gun. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.